Welcome to the Peace and Justice Review, a weekly program dedicated to examining important issues involving human rights, economic and social justice, the environment, and struggles for peace around the world. This program is sponsored by the Peace and Justice Center, which works to create a just, peaceful, and ecologically healthy world through education, advocacy, training, and nonviolent activism. Please drop by and visit the Peace and Justice Center, store, and resource library at 21 Church Street in Burlington, or call 863-2345 to find out more about how to get active in your world.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Good afternoon. Once again, we're meeting with you. Today we want to start our program celebrating the life and times of one of the greatest trial lawyers in the history of the United States. John Cochran died yesterday at the age of 67 years of age. As I was sitting there absorbing the news, one of the things that hit me was the healthcare situation for Afro-Americans in this country. And once again, early detection. He eventually died of a brain tumor in the brain. Began with prostate cancer, which is a disease that attacks Afro-American men twice as more as the rest of the population. Johnny Cochran, like Wyatt Earp, was a legend in his own time. He was an icon. He changed the face of trial lawyering in this country. He was a man, he was gracious, he was bright, he was a leader, and never stepped back from the whole issue of race and racial profiling in this country. I'm now going to turn to Larry and Vaughn.
Well, Johnny Cochran once said that his proudest moments in lawyering were not related to the O.J. case or the Sean Combs case or any other very high-profile celebrity cases that he handled. He said no, his most satisfying moments in legal practice were in the triumphs and victories that he brought to the no-J's rather than to the O.J.'s. Those anonymous, faceless, everyday people who had been victimized by the police and required representation. Johnny Cochran was a champion to all of them, to all of us, and in my view, he stands right next to Thurgood Marshall in the pantheon of legal heroes in America. I would also say that Johnny Cochran single-handedly slew the myth of the bumbling, incompetent black lawyer that was propagated in the 40s, 50s, and 60s on the Amos and Andy show with Algonquin J. Calhoun. I don't think I ever heard that name again after Johnny Cochran mesmerized all of America with his courtroom performances in the O.J. case. Johnny Cochran single-handedly slew the image of Algonquin J. Calhoun, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. Larry?
And I have nothing to add to that except that I, of course, grew up on the Calhoun.
That's right.
And that was the image of black legal experts, so to speak. I guess what really tears me apart, and I'm sure it does all of us, is that we are losing our champions. So it seems so rapidly right now. We were just talking about Ozzie Davis a week or so, a couple of weeks ago, and now we've lost another champion. The other thing that I would add is what John was saying about the health statistics of African Americans, of black Americans, and we still lag, and we haven't closed that gap very much. We're still, for example, 10 years behind white Americans in terms of the longevity of life, and he was what, 67?
67.
On average, black American men don't live long enough to collect Social Security.
Correct.
So we're paying into a system which we don't even benefit from on average. It's very sad, and we have a lot of work to do.
That
obviously.
statistic never comes up when they discuss overhauling the Social Security.
A lot of things never come up.
Right.
In fact, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as far as the media is concerned. It's not only what they do or say, it's what they don't
That's
say.
what they don't say.
Let's
So we don't
talk
get
about,
the information that we need.
I think Johnny Cochran's a perfect example of how we can talk about the media too. I mean, remember how those morning shows with those women, Katie Couric and
Yep.
all of them, how they really were trying to tear him apart
Oh, yeah.
for playing the race card. Isn't
Oh,
that what
yeah.
they
That's
what
called
they
it?
said.
Oh, yeah, of
Right.
course, that's what they called it.
Now, Vaughn, the other thing I give him credit for, he never backed off of that issue
Never.
because he knew that that was a primary issue, and every time a blackface went on trial in America
Yep.
in any criminal action.
Correct.
Are there black people who are guilty? Yes. But Johnny Cochran, more than any black lawyer I've seen in my own time, never backed down from that issue.
No, he didn't. And Johnny Cochran was vilified by the popular media in a nonstop way after the O.J. Simpson trial. There was righteous indignation and outrage. There was constant mockery on various comedy shows. Every attempt to disparage him and to destroy the well-deserved reputation he had built as a defender of the underprivileged and downtrodden. And I thought that the whole thing was reprehensible. It smacked of a media double standard. And I believe Cornel West gave us this hypothetical. He said, if Jerry Seinfeld had been accused of a double murder in Beverly Hills, and the only person who had found the bloody glove was an Officer Farrakhan who had a long history of antipathy toward Jews, what do you think the verdict would have been? You know?
Yeah.
And you know, the other point of this that eludes most people is that in over 98% of the cases where prosecutorial or police misconduct has been shown, acquittals have resulted. If anybody is to blame for the O.J. case, it's not Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran's job was not to make the case for Christopher Darden and Marcia Clark. They were supposed to build their own case. They didn't do that. They botched the case.
You mean he was the defense lawyer?
That's true. He was the
And-
defense. Not his job to help them.
You're a full professor. What does defense mean? You defend, right? To defend.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So he got vilified for doing his job.
He
Of
was
course.
vilified for doing his job, and in fact...
And it never let up.
And they never let up.
It never let up.
And in fact, the hostility and the threats became so intense that he relocated to New York, in large part to escape all of the threats on his life that had been made in Los Angeles, simply for doing his job, doing what he was paid to do.
But that's the nation we live in.
That's right.
We know this. We know there's a double standard, for goodness sake. And,
Yeah.
and it operates at every
course it
level,
does.
in every area.
In every
That's
context,
just the way it is.
you know? And I looked
So
at...
he didn't act out the part of the good Negro.
That's what he's supposed to do in this
But he
country.
didn't.
But he didn't.
But he did not.
He went against
didn't.
that.
Of course he
Yeah.
did. Of course he did. And that's why we're saying he's a champion.
Yes, of course.
I mean, it's too bad that all of us can't act that way.
He's a giant.
Yeah. Yes,
no,
he was.
No question about it. And it's smooth,
And he carried
beautiful,
himself
carried himself so beautifully.
Yes, he did.
well beyond the reach of those who dared try to vilify him.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you talk about the double standard. I'd like to talk about the double voice, because right now watch all the praise that he gets
Of course.
on the press.
Oh, he's getting it.
Watch these white lawyers and these white legal
Rushing
experts
to-
now rush out and talk
Guess
about
who-
how great this guy
Guess who did the
was.
talking yesterday?
Oh,
What's that blonde-haired woman? There's never been a defendant that was innocent in America. She does all this
I don't know.
CNN all the time. She's blonde-haired.
Don't know.
She was on Courtroom. And then Alan Dershowitz.
Oh, yes, I know who you're
You know,
talking about.
she's-
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
I mean,
Yep,
you know,
I
she's
do.
like the Arian Huffington
yeah,
of law practice.
right.
You know, I mean, she is, and then she had to say, he's the one that, he gave her a start.
Oh.
She said that. She
Right.
said if it wasn't for him, I'd be out trying little cases.
Yeah, that's true.
He put me on the map.
Yeah.
Dershowitz said that his other strength was that he wasn't ego-driven. That he had this way of pulling other lawyers in who were
Right.
experts in certain
Right,
act.
right.
That's right.
But what he was the master at courtroom presentation.
Of course. That was his forte. He was supremely articulate and confident in his courtroom presentations, and he had a very commanding presence.
And she said that the other thing he could do was charm judges right off the bench
And juries.
and juries.
And juries. You know, there was a tremendous amount of fallout in the wake of the O.J. verdict. Yeah, any number of people claiming that the jury system needed to be changed, that, you know, this was just the worst example of jury nullification. Well, let's take that, you know, back a little ways. We don't have to go that far. Jury nullification was being practiced in the American South well into the 1960s, which was why no prosecutor could ever get a conviction in any lynching case in the
Right
South.
before the O.J. thing, we watched 25 cops beat Rodney King almost to death on the streets of New York, and not one of them
Los
was
Angeles.
convicted
Then there was
in the
Senior
same
Valley.
jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Okay, please.
Yeah. I mean,
That
you know,
was not outrage. That wasn't an outrage. This is the double standard that
As
we
a
live
matter of
under.
fact, one of the big statistics of that time was that no white man had ever, in the history of this country, lost his life for the murder of a black person.
That's correct.
True?
True.
That is true. No.
So,
I
but
mean,
let's talk about
The double standard runs
Let's-
right into the grave.
Let's,
You know.
jeez.
But, you know, getting back to
Yeah.
Johnny Cochran and his legacy, I think that, you know, history will vindicate him, notwithstanding the criticism that he's received. And I think history's going to be a fantastic judge of Johnny Cochran and all that he stood for and represented. I only hope and pray that he has served as an example to other young black lawyers and minority lawyers out there who will assume that mantle and step forward and conduct their careers in the exemplary fashion
You
that
mean
Johnny
that they
Cochran
shouldn't
did.
have the skin and grin to get their clients a fair
That's
trial?
correct. That is correct.
Wow.
Yes.
I hope so too. But,
And that's what I liked about him. He
whatever-
would not play the buffoon for anyone.
No.
Whatever else we say, there is right now a void. And
And that kind of
we're going to miss
leadership.
him. Going to miss him. I mean,
He was one,
One
of
of
a
the,
kind. He was one of a
the
kind.
things that's not
That's
even
right.
talked about is the National Bar Association, which Vaughn can talk about. He gave them a large amount of money 2 years ago.
Yes, the National Bar Association, for the uninitiated, is the association which was established for black lawyers in the United States who were not allowed to become members of the American Bar Association
I'm shocked.
until 1962. So we had our own bar association, which was a national
that's
bar
the
association.
equivalent of the National Medical Association.
Exactly.
For the same reasons.
We had the
Yes.
same, you know, as I sat there yesterday, and Johnny Cochran came to mind, Bishop Tutu was talking about South Africa and how they refused entrance to college.
Right.
That wasn't much different than what was going on in America, which is why we had established 47 black colleges in America.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, And then they let the trickle-down effect come in when they wanted a good half-miler for their track team. Larry,
Yeah, I know.
that's your cue to step in.
No, I'm all right. We,
You know,
we have lots to talk about.
Yes,
but Johnny Cochran, when Vaughn, when you think of him as a lawyer,
Yeah.
if you were teaching about Johnny Cochran, what would you be saying to a classroom full of young lawyers about to watch about Johnny Cochran?
I would say that Johnny Cochran was very unself-conscious. He was very ethical in his dealings with his clients and with others. And he was very, very comfortable in his own skin because Johnny Cochran didn't have any reason to fear anyone. His intellect was astounding. It was above reproach. In fact, he was one of the first black students in LA High School. A lot of people don't know that. LA High School was not integrated until the 1950s.
Really?
And Johnny Cochran was one of the first 10 black students at LA High.
No, I didn't.
And he established himself there and developed a reputation as a champion debater in
They
high school.
also were talking about him in the last night, and that he made his first big splash when he was 29.
Yeah. Correct.
Were a case where he took on the police department.
That's right.
But he was also the one, and here's the other thing, he had persistence. He lost the case for the Black Panther for that murder, and 25 years later, he got him out of jail.
Yeah, he came back and
No, really, he never gave up on this guy.
yeah, Geronimo Pratt was his name.
Geronimo
Yeah.
Pat. I mean, so he didn't defend people according to their social standing,
No.
or whether they were stars or whatever.
No. The only individuals he refused to defend and would never take their cases were drug dealers. And that he did on principle, because his feeling was they did far too much harm to the black community. He did not want to lend himself and his skills to them and their activities. So he had a hardline rule. He would never represent them, and he didn't, even though they could have paid him hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars. Instead, he chose to represent the average Joes who couldn't pay him. And he made a fantastic statement in the way that he went about that. A true giant.
I, myself, was in awe. I mean, I watched him in an interview talk about where again, it was a white interviewer who couldn't get over the fact that he actually would accuse the police of doing things that were illegal.
Yeah.
And he was unrelenting in his answers. He never once gave in to or tried to make them comfortable in that way that a lot of our folk can do at times.
Right.
You know, with the oppressor, we will go out of our way to make the oppressor feel good about themselves.
Feel
by
comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Feel comfortable in the setting.
yeah.
That's true.
And he was unrelenting. And he did it graciously,
Yeah.
smartly. Larry, I mean, you got to see that this is one of the most fantastic interviews I did.
Yeah. Let me see.
He said, I didn't do that to Mark Furman.
Right.
He said, Mark Furman did that to himself.
That's true. Yes, he did.
He said, Mark Furman had no business. He mustn't have a supervisor.
Yeah.
And he said, where were the prosecutors that they let him come in?
Yeah, right.
And
Well,
see, he's the first one that I seen take on police departments about these issues, which are widespread in this country.
Yep.
But we've talked about that before on this program, and that is that somehow in the white mind or in the white psyche or in the white something, racist activities and racism never rise to the level at which one rejects that person or rejects that kind of thing. Somehow, I mean, if you look, for example, at the respect that is paid senators who are as racist as anybody can be, who have been members of the KKK, for example, or who have been members of the White Citizens Council, or whatever, and yet they are treated with the utmost of respect, as opposed to being shunned, for goodness sake, because of what they have done or what they believe.
See, I
it
think
never rises to that level.
That's what makes
It's
him a
very
giant,
interesting.
that he took that system
Of
on.
course,
Yeah.
exactly.
And he
what,
showed it up to be exactly what it is.
exactly.
Well, racism is never cause enough to be concerned in the minds of most white people. That's
Exactly
the
what I'm
problem
saying.
here, you know.
Say that again?
It's never cause enough for concern
For concern.
in the minds of many people. You know, it's, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal.
You know, and I find him to be a pleasant guy. And,
Yeah, right.
You know, he's got a sense of humor, and, you know, I have a drink with him every now and then.
We sang
and
songs
that kind of
together.
thing.
Never
Oh, of
one
course.
senator said.
Oh, of course. We sang songs together. I mean, it's never a cause for rejection. It's amazing to me. But that's the world, that's the country that we live in.
Let's get back to the media, though, and let's talk about how the media operates and the double
Does the
standards
media
that they
operate?
impose. Oh, it operates, trust me. I mean, you know, I look, for example, at, let's just go back to O.J., for example. He has been vilified and castigated and persecuted non-stop since his acquittal almost 10 years ago. Yet you look at a John DeLorean who was acquitted after holding up a brick of cocaine on film. And he was not treated the same way.
How about the Kennedy nephew?
William Kennedy Smith?
Right.
Yeah, no. I mean, they have not been vilified in the same way that O.J. has. It's just the double standard at work, and it works overtime. I mean, you know, I don't defend what the man has done, but let's take the Michael Jackson case, for example. Let's take that, for example. Now, Johnny Cochran gave Michael Jackson the best advice he could have ever given him, and it was
Leave
free.
the kids alone.
You mean
It
the
was
first-
free.
You mean the
When,
first
when,
time
when
that-
Michael Jackson
right.
settled that case 10 years ago
Right.
for $25 million, Johnny Cochran worked the settlement out for him. He said, Michael, I don't care what's in your heart. I don't care what's in your soul. I don't care what's in your mind. You have got to leave these kids alone, or else you're going to face this again and again and again. Well, Michael couldn't do
Well,
that.
see, Michael made the classic mistake that I see a lot of black people make, which is he thought he had gotten to a plateau in this country where white folks really weren't going to go after him. And I always think of John Henry Clark, of what he said,
Famous historian. Yeah.
the famous historian, that an N is an N is an N.
Right.
And that's it in the end.
That's true.
You know, when you were stopped that time coming out of Randolph, they didn't care who you were.
That's true.
You were a black man with a car. When Larry was harassed in customs, they didn't care who Larry was or what his rank was. He just got harassed. You know, and then the same things has happened to all of us in our life. No matter what our stature or how well I do. I always think of that line in The Godfather 3.
Yeah.
Every time I think I've done okay, they pull
They
me
pull me
right
back.
back in. That's the life of a black American.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
And the media is the biggest perpetuator of this. With their slanted stories,
Oh, I
with
agree.
the stuff that they leave out.
Yeah, you see, that's a big part of it.
Whose crime is more major as opposed to whose crime is not? Did Robert Blake get the same coverage that O.J. got?
That's forgotten now.
Phil
That's all
Spector's
behind
still
him.
waiting to be tried.
That's right. That's correct. That's all behind Robert Blake now. He'll go out and somebody's going to hire him. You know, he'll make his money back. You know, it's over and done. But, you know.
And he tried to hire 2 different people to kill the woman.
Well, of course. You know, I mean, you look at that case and, you know, the prosecution probably didn't prove its case. I didn't see it sitting on the trial, so I can't say with any certainty.
But I
can't
don't
say
hear
definitively.
the
But they
outrage.
couldn't, all they said is, well, we couldn't put a gun in his hand. Well, by the very same token, they couldn't put a knife in O.J. Simpson's hand. So what's the difference? There is none.
I don't hear Katie Couric doing story after story
And
about
you
that.
won't.
And you won't.
And you won't.
It's over and done.
Diane Sawyer,
And you
Star
won't.
Jones.
I mean,
That's
Okay.
when,
Oprah Winfrey.
Yep.
I don't hear them going after Robert Blake.
Nope. And you won't. It's done. And you won't hear much more about it at all. You know, again, it's part of that double standard when it comes to the criminal justice system.
I mean,
Well,
you know, the media, you know, and you know, I want people to understand out there that Vaughn and Larry and I say that we don't believe that every black person who goes on trial is innocent. You know,
not at all.
and that's
No,
not what we're saying.
no,
Not
we're
at
not.
all.
No, we're not talking
Not at
about
all.
that at all. I mean, that's not the point. And I think we've made that clear. I
Right.
certainly hope so.
Well, you know,
I
you
mean,
have to
I
reiterate.
mean, I'm not a Michael Jackson fan, for example.
I've never been a Michael Jackson.
Okay,
No.
okay, so I'm not, that's not what I'm talking about. But when the fact that Michael Jackson is late for his trial, and that becomes
Headline news.
not only headline news, but to break into a program,
Right.
to break into a program as a news flash.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, apparently a lot of people
do.
care.
I mean, you look at the New York
Okay.
Post, for example.
Oh, it's just
that rotten
incredible.
rag. Almost
Just
every
incredible.
other day, the screaming headline story is something about Michael Jackson. Yes.
Exactly. And-
Don't they need to give it a break. Yeah, I don't care about it that much.
Man, they've got-
But, you know, it's all about whipping up a frenzy, appealing to the basest racial instincts, and slanting the minds of the people who
Keep
read
that in
slop.
mind. I watched one of the high-ranking
Read that
bishops,
swill.
because I'm Catholic, and I'm going to say this, being interviewed last week on a major network. And he's going on about right to life and this and that and the other. This interviewer, nuns never asked him, well, what are y'all going to do about all them pedophiles you got in the church? That question never got answered. That guy ever got asked.
No, of course not.
And he talking about the right of the church to control elections.
That's one of the things that my friend Ken Wibercan, who is a journalist, has written about and talks about all the time. And that is, it isn't nearly as bad what the press says
As what they
it
don't
doesn't
say, and what they
as
don't
what it
ask.
leaves out. And it's just incredible. Let me give you an example from one of his articles. American oil companies, the price of gas is going up like crazy, as all of us know, and that's on all the time. Okay, dig this. ExxonMobil, writes Ariana Huffington.
That's what I said. She's on that board.
Who incidentally is pretty straight
Right.
in terms of what she says. ExxonMobil more than doubled their cash flow last year, ending 2004 with $23.1 billion in its bulging coffers. In fact, every time the price of a barrel of oil goes up $1, Exxon's accountants chalk up another $550 million in after-tax profits. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that oil companies are actually having a hard time figuring out what to do with all that cash. Now, have you seen any of that on television? Is anybody reporting what's going on
What is the
with
source?
these big profits? In
What is
terms
the
of-
major source of the Bush fortune?
Well, I know, but
Huh?
the point is that doesn't get talked about, and we need to hear information like
Why
that,
would it get talked about?
because that's what a news broadcast is supposed to be. We're supposed to hear things like that which affect our daily lives.
Yeah, but go ahead.
No, that's okay.
But
Go ahead.
you know, what we have seen over the last 4.5, 5 years is a relatively benign press muzzled
You know why.
and knocked to its knees and intimidated by the Bush administration and its minions. You know, I looked at what
and
happened.
one more factor, I don't want to break into you.
Yeah.
One more factor, and that is that's easy to do because the other defect in this whole system is the fact that so few people own the system.
That's true. Correct.
The other part of it,
Whereas there used to be
I
individual
remember
stations, now
20
what,
years
3 people own maybe 95%.
20 years ago, you really got the news.
Yeah, well,
That
you know,
has changed drastically in
and that's
20.
what- and that's
in
what-
the last, and that's what Vaughn
that's
is
what we're
talking
saying.
about. Everybody's pretty or cute, got to be good looking to be on, and they're not good reporters. That's the other thing.
Well, they're not reporters. They're mouthpieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just say what's put in front of them. You know, many of them are empty suits and dresses when it comes down to cases. But you look at some of the journalists of old, Walter Cronkite,
Right.
John Cameron Swayze, you know, Walter Winchell even. You know,
Those
these
are two
people.
guys that did the elections.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Remember, they were a team.
I don't know. But in any case,
One would
you
be
know,
in New York and one would be in Washington.
yeah, you had who, Huntley Brinkley?
Huntley Brinkley.
Yeah, well, those guys. I mean, you know, you had a media that was relatively independent and forthright in what it did. And, you know, that's how Watergate came about.
of course.
You know, I don't think we'll see the likes of that.
Reporters, there are no such things
Not anymore. Not anymore. When a Dan Rather is set up, and I'll always believe that he was set up on that Bush draft story, somewhere along the
He
line.
was set up by his own people.
No, somewhere along the line.
But not only did, I'm saying,
Let me finish. Somewhere along the line, Karl Rove's hand is in this.
but no,
I
I'm
will
not
always
saying
believe
wrong.
that.
What I'm saying is, Karl Rove's hand was in it, but somebody at CBS also participated in
Well,
it.
of course.
Because their research is done there.
Well, that's right. But look, you know, the hand that pulled the trigger is not the hand that bought the bullet in this case.
But I know when Karl Rove couldn't have bought a station to do that.
That's correct.
That's my point.
Yeah.
They're all owned by entertainment,
They're all owned by conglomerates.
yeah, and entertainment things.
You know, I'm at the point now where I will watch BBC News
Yeah,
in
so
the
will I.
evening.
I watch
on PBS.
BBC.
But I cannot watch
And
these news
CCF and CBC.
You listen to BBC right on the heels of any of our major networks, ABC, CBS, or NBC.
Did you see BBC do
It's not, it's not even the same news.
That's my
BBC.
point.
You're listening to us saying,
Exactly.
Wait a minute. What did I just hear? And what am I hearing now?
Right.
BBC had a report where they criticized BBC
Of course.
about the laws at BBC. Did
Yeah.
you see that one?
No.
I cracked up laughing.
No. But I mean, you know, if you want fair and balanced, you have to go to a foreign network. BBC will occasionally broadcast Al Jazeera coverage, which tells you a radically different story
And
from what's going on about what's going on in Iraq from what we're being
I
told by the
also
major
watch,
networks.
because I know you get it.
Even
I
the
watch a
Canadian
lot of
stations.
Canadian
I watch
stations.
Canadian stations
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
That's
even the
it's
Canadian
like
stations
night and day. I mean, you can't
So
believe
you
they're
don't
reporting on the
believe
same
that
facts.
that we in the same world as
No,
their people
that's right.
there.
We are not getting the news that we need. And that's all there is to it.
And that's the bottom line. We're not
That's
getting
the
the
bottom
news
line. We're
that
not
the
getting the
people need
stuff that
to
we
hear.
need to hear.
I mean, you know, what we've got is a case of bait and switch, divert and switch. You know, people are so consumed with Terry Schiavo and Michael Jackson, which means nothing to them in their lives, that they have completely missed the point of the Bankruptcy Reform Act, which has instituted a brand new form of debtor's prison. What it means is that people will never get a fresh start. They can never get out of debt. You will be strapped to economic peonage for most of your life under the strictures of these new laws. Where are the majority, the overwhelming majority of personal bankruptcies filed? In red states. You know, is that a form of justice or what? But I mean, you know, most people don't even understand what's been done to them. This whole business of Social Security privatization, that's another case of a diversion.
Well,
I
that
think
one-
they backed off that.
That's right, because they're running. He's out, though. He's out today in Iowa
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I don't think that's going to fly.
promoting that.
But I mean, you know,
But they
what
haven't
you've
backed
got,
off of it, I can
Yeah,
He
but
hasn't backed
I can
off.
assure you.
Vaughn,
Well,
he was
They
just,
haven't,
he's in
they
Iowa
haven't
today.
backed off.
A lot of-
and we're not getting the information that
Right.
we need.
That's right.
I mean,
a
we're
lot of
getting a
his-
selling job.
a lot of his Republican support has evaporated.
Yeah, I know that.
A lot of these
No, I
guys are
realize
saying,
that,
hey,
and I don't
we
think
can't
it'll-
go there with
I don't think it'll fly either. But
they're
the
not
point-
giving it
but
up.
We're talking about the media.
Yeah.
And the media is not giving us what we need. You talked about the Shivo case.
Yeah.
Listen to this from Ken Wibbecan. Son Hudson. Never heard of him, you say? He was a 6-month-old infant with a fatal heart condition in a Texas hospital.
In Texas.
His mother asked that he be kept alive as long as possible, but the hospital refused to pay for the care that would be required, and the mother could not afford it. Therefore, last week, the hospital removed his feeding tube, and he died. It didn't even make the morning news.
That's right.
And yet,
Well, you know, my daughter Nicole,
over and over.
you know, my daughter
and over
Nicole
again.
said she wants to know who's funding these people.
Well,
Yeah, I
you
know.
You know, I mean-
somebody asked me that yesterday.
You know,
Well, you know who what was revealed in the news yesterday, in you know, surprising burst of candor, was that many of the lists of donators to the Shivo family, to her parents, have been sold to various conservative groups who are looking for donors to their own causes. So, you know, it's pretty clear who is behind this. And I think, you know, what's so ironic about all of this is that, you know, those people who are advocating the rights of this woman's parents to determine her fate are the same people who are constantly braying about the sanctity of marriage, you know, and the holy
family
bond
values.
between husband and wife. Well,
Right.
what happened to it in this case?
well, because it doesn't fit their needs.
Of course it does.
Of course not.
You know, because
I mean, we know what that is.
and their needs switch back and forth.
Of course.
You know, these are the same people who want the right to life kind of thing.
But they want the death penalty on
They
the
want the
backside.
death penalty, and then on top of that, they don't want to support single mothers having these kids. They don't want early childhood education. You know, so I always think of Maria Antoinette when I think of them.
Yeah.
Let them eat cake.
Yep.
You know, I mean that, and I'm not sure she said that, but that's
Yeah,
you know.
it's probably apocryphal.
Right.
But, you know, I think the Terry Shivo case has garnered altogether too much ink. There's been too much written about it. There's been too much said about it. You know, this woman's husband is simply honoring her stated wishes, which in fact were expressed to others as well. So there's no doubt about what she wanted. So why has this become an issue for Congress, for the politicians, for Florida Governor Jeb Bush, for Jesse Jackson, who's down there, for God's sake?
Now, why was
You
he
know.
down there? Would you please explain what he's doing down there?
Well, I guess he believes in the sanctity of human life. I don't know. But I think more likely it's a camera and he can stand in front of it and get some
See?
airtime. That's what I think it really
See,
is.
we're right back to what Larry was talking about on the previous show with the 80,000 black folks in Ohio
Yep.
who voted for George Bush because guys held hands with guys and women held hands with women.
Right, exactly.
See, this is why we get all mixed up in this racism stuff and why, you know, I mean, we're at odds with ourselves.
Well, I don't
Does
think
he
so.
really think the conservative movement in this country gives a F about black folk in America?
No, of course not. Never have. They were the ones who were the prime advocates against civil rights laws. They fought civil rights laws tooth and nail.
Well, you're talking about the bankrupt law. 2 years, what act runs out? The Voting Rights Act ends in
Right.
2 years. I want to see what happens in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very interesting. You know, I think that, you know, you look at the coverage, for example, that's being given to our Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. You know, the media has turned into a cheerleading section for this woman who has repeatedly lied to the American people and to the world, who sold this war in Iraq on a pack of lies, and, you know, continues to do this kind of thing knowingly. Why hasn't anybody stepped up and taken her on?
Well-
Where's Bill Cosby in all of this? You know, it's easy for him to throw a pie in the face of a homeless mother with 3 kids. Why doesn't he take on Condoleezza Rice? Why doesn't he pick on somebody his own size? You know, Michael Eric Dyson has written a book, and it was profiled in last Sunday's New York Times. It was titled, Bill Cosby is Not Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not funny, you know?
Unfortunately, some of the things he said was true.
Some were true, but I think that,
But he
you know,
didn't.
he could pick more deserving targets for his contempt. That's
You
all
know,
I'm saying.
I'm not contemptuous of it. You know, I just think that there's a whole malaise that has taken us over as a group also. We have a black middle class that no longer performs its task in leadership, who could care less about the less fortunate, who, as Cornel West has brought into the greed concept,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and are suffering because of it. I mean, Michael Jackson is a prime example of that. There was just someone else recently who also got their head handed back to them. Look what they did. I mean, Michael Jordan in the NBA was wonderful. They have since turned their back on him.
How do you mean?
That guy in Washington told him, get his hat.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
Well,
Johnson,
Well, so
who
what?
owns the Chicago-
so what?
I'm just saying they use you as long as they can use you. And they don't care who you are at the end. If they can get rid of you, they will.
Well, Michael Jordan's pretty mercenary in his own right. He's the one who refused to support Harvey Gantt as in his run for
Absolutely.
governor of North Carolina.
But I'm saying,
And his comment, no, let me
I'm saying they're coming back to haunt him, Vaughn.
let me repeat this comment to you. Republicans buy sneakers too.
well,
Okay,
Vaughn,
that's
Vaughn,
fine.
But Vaughn, see, I know he did that. That's the point that I was trying to make. I'm just not a Democrat.
I understand. I'm not
You
talking.
know,
We're not talking about Democrat Republican.
I'm just saying that his politics is on the wrong side of the road and
Well-
always have been.
Well, it's not about politics. It's about opportunism
Well, that's what I
and
mean.
personal greed. That's all.
Well, if you're opportunistic, your politics is on the wrong side anyway.
Well, then you know what? That's a double-edged sword.
But where are we going?
When
with
Abe
all this?
Pollan and those folks gave him his hat in D.C., my feeling was, well, you know, that's the game you chose to play.
With this is the reporting that doesn't get done, the stories that don't get told. And he's held up to black kids as an icon. And the true story about him is not really told.
Oh, so we're going back to the
The
media.
media. I mean, again, it's about
Okay.
the media.
Because-
he couldn't be an icon if the media didn't support him in that.
Yeah,
you know.
well,
I mean, I think
Well, you can only be an icon if your politics are right. So, you know,
but I'm
that's-
just saying, in their
let's
mind,
make
he's an
that clear.
icon. You know, you want to use the word the way you want to use it. But, you know, there was a time when people couldn't walk down the street unless they had a Nike pair of sneakers. So he set the tone for style and pace and everything. And people can resent it all they want.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is the media made him a giant.
Yes.
yeah, okay.
So,
And it was a bad media because
Yeah.
they never told the true story about him.
yeah.
You know, and the black media never told the true story about him. Because I watched BET in those days, because I lived in a place where BET was shown. And they never talked about him. You know, even Tavis Smiley and Tom Joyner, who I have a lot of regard for, have backed off of him at times. And if our own media is not going to do the job, see, and again, we play into the hands of this, and we project, and this, all this racism that's played on our heads, if we're not going to recognize it, and we don't take it on all levels, we're in trouble. And that's what made Bishop Tutu and Mandela unique in the Afro-American experience in America. Afro-Americans are so busy tearing each other apart and putting each other that,
But we're doing that right now.
I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to say is that the media elevated someone into a role that he didn't deserve. We as a community let that happen. You know, that's all I'm saying.
How could we let that happen when we don't control the media?
Good point.
Yeah.
But we had some media.
That's true.
And
Okay.
enough of us watched
Well-
that media. Tom Joyner has 9 million Afro-Americans every morning who listen to him.
That's right.
9 million.
That is correct.
See? So what I'm saying, even in our media, we have to take some...
He also has sponsors. He also has a network he has to answer to.
No, but he did an interesting thing, Vaughn. He changed that because what he did was expose that these sponsors didn't pay black stations what they paid white stations.
Yeah, okay.
And so consequently, they're so upset, they're going to give him the sponsorship anyway. I'm just saying, if we're going to criticize, we got to do the job better to ourselves in our own media.
Well, I don't think any one of us is denying that.
Go ahead.
No, I don't think we are. I just don't think that we can expect everybody who happens to be black, whatever the heck that means, to operate in a certain way. I mean, there are always going to be differences among us in this sense. I got a chance to make some money. My God, the heck with everything else. I'm going to make it. Fortunately, we have a number of people who are not that way, and those are the ones that I hold up as heroes.
And fortunately, what they have showed,
And
Johnny,
that's the best we're going to do.
what
You
Johnny,
can't get everybody
what
on
Johnny
your side.
Cochran, and going back to him again,
Yes.
showed it's possible to do both.
I know. I
See?
know.
And
I
that's
know.
what we lost sight of.
No, I don't think we lost sight of it. I think that there are very few individuals who in fact can do both.
Yeah.
You did both,
No, I didn't do both. I don't have any money, for one thing.
but you had a decent living and a good living.
Oh, yeah, listen.
Better
I'm
than the average black
No,
American.
I'm not complaining.
No,
Believe
hear
me.
what I'm saying. We have people, okay, I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to stay out of that. But let's go back to the media.
They're going to deify Johnny Cochran now in the very same way that they
Yes.
deified Martin Luther King. When
Of
prior to his
course.
death, Martin Luther King was one of the most despised men in
hated.
America.
He was
Johnny
hated.
Cochran was one of the most hated men in
So was
America.
Malcolm.
Okay.
You know, when Muhammad Ali's time comes, he is going to be
Do you
deified
remember
and
what- do you
beatified and everything else
Do you remember
when
what
that
the press
time
did to
comes.
Muhammad Ali for
Of
the first
course we do.
Of
10 years of
course.
his career?
Of course.
Of course. God, he lost everything. Couldn't get anything going for himself.
You know, he was reduced to penury.
Tore him
I
up.
remember one interview he did with Buckley, and you know, and he exposed, Muhammad exposed something in the white media that really drives me crazy, is when they try to show us the error of our ways.
Oh, yeah.
So Buckley reaches over and says, I'm concerned for you. Because the Muslims don't like white people and blah, 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 and they're teaching you hate. So Muhammad Ali, in that innate intelligent way of his, looked at him and said, you think at 24, after growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, that they had to teach me to dislike white people?
It's beautiful. No, I'm serious.
And the guy,
It's
and he
beautiful.
said, and let me give you an example. He said, all of y'all are making me mad. He said, every day you go past a house, an old man sitting on the porch, and he's got a pie. And the little boy comes by every day, please, mister, give me a piece of pie. Please, sir, give me a piece of the pie. He said, 10 days go, and you done got down to the old, last, stale, dusty crease, and then you want to give me the pie. And I look at him and say, no, mister, I don't want your pie. It's stale, and it's gone. See, that's the point.
That's beautiful.
And, you know, I mean, and the media did a job on him that was
yeah.
amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was the number
yeah.
one hated person in America.
He
at
was
that
the
time.
most despised black man in the world. He was the Jack Johnson of his time. And now, of course, now that he's in, his golden years, everybody wants to pretend that, oh yeah, we always loved Muhammad Ali. Oh yeah, we always thought he was great.
Lie.
No, they didn't.
Lie.
There were people in this country who wanted to hang him from the highest tree as a traitor. But you'll never hear anything about that now in the media. It's always been sweetness and light, and yes, we look at Muhammad Ali as this great hero. That's nonsense. I mean, you know, you've got to have a long memory for that, but you also have to know the media
Well,
and how it
now,
operates.
let's go, we can go from the media. Let's take the baseball player. I mean, is there anybody
There's another example.
being crucified more than he is right now?
There's another example.
I mean, they've got him on the news programs being crucified.
Who's that? Which one?
Barry Bonds.
Barry
Yeah,
Bonds.
yeah.
And Barry, and the sports media will never stay out of this one.
Oh, no, no.
Because they hate him.
They're never going to leave him alone.
They hate him because he will not kowtow to those people.
That's right.
He will not grant them interviews. He'll tell them to go to hell, quite frankly. And
He's
they
done
don't-
it.
And they don't like that at all. And so he'll always be vilified.
I mean,
And they're going to chew him
And-
up. They're going to chew him up in this whole thing.
I can remember 10 years ago when Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire and them,
Right.
everybody knew they were using steroids.
Right.
Mark McGuire had them right up on his shelf.
Yeah.
It wasn't an issue. It never became an issue. I remember when in the Olympics, half of East Germany and Russia were doping and doing everything.
Of course.
It wasn't an issue.
Yeah. But look at it this way, and you have to understand the media's sleight of hand and how they deal. They dragged Mark McGuire into this simply as the white foil,
Right.
to show that yes, you know, we're not unfairly or inequitably targeting black athletes. We got a white one here too. Look at
Right.
Mark McGuire. Well, he's retired. His days are behind him, and you know, the taint is not going to stick to him nearly to the extent that it's going to stick to a Barry Bonds.
Of course.
Or
You know,
trying to say Sosa.
or Sosa, who's never clean. He said he's never used anything. But I mean, you know, you look at the double standards. You know, even when they attempt to show that they're behaving in a manner that's fair and balanced, they behave in a bigoted way.
And see, we sent a thing off, and the guy sent us back. I said, look, I don't have a problem. Y'all want to put an asterisk in the book? I want asterisk in the book up until 1947.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
I said,
Right.
why ain't we talking about that?
Right.
I want all the records in the books before 1947.
Correct.
I said, and you got races in this thing? In the horror? Judd Landis said, as long as he was commissioner of baseball, them niggas wouldn't play in that league.
That's
Right.
right.
Ty Cobb's major
That's
sport
right.
was beating up people black women who worked in the hotel. Babe Ruth was a drunk and whatever. I mean, I want all those records to have asterisks.
Of course. I mean, you look at the Hall of Fame, it's filled with drunks, ne'er-do-wells, criminals, wife beaters, you know, sexual predators, you name it. And, you know, they want to make an
They
issue out of it.
bragged about Babe Ruth's sexuality.
Yeah, Babe Ruth's exploits.
Right.
I mean, yeah, all of it, I think, is a charade, and it's an empty one. I think that you know, if they want to start putting asterisks in the record books, you're right. They ought to put an asterisk to everything
yeah,
that preceded
yeah.
Jackie Robinson's entry in 1947.
Yep.
You know, we want to play the asterisk game. I'm
Let's
for
go.
it.
Let's do it.
And I want it in football, too. Kenny Washington,
Oh, yeah.
at the height of his career, wasn't allowed to
yes.
play in the National
Sure.
Football
Oh,
League.
yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
Woody Strode
Yep.
and Kenny Washington and Jackie Robinson were the most lethal combination in football at UCLA.
Yep.
All three of them played together. I remember going to see Kenny Washington play when his career was over. He was playing for the Los Angeles Rams. His career was practically over. Okay.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how this war in Iraq has been portrayed by the media, or maybe how it hasn't been portrayed. I have a friend who's a physician on staff at Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington, D.C. And what he said is that there are thousands of young men who are single and double amputees that this society knows nothing about because they're in military hospitals here and in Ramstein, Germany. What he is saying is that the true wages of this war will never be brought home to the American people until some of these kids start getting released into public life. And that's when we're going to see
Well-
what the wages of this war are. The wages of a war that those who formulated it will not allow their sons and daughters to go and fight.
I tell you something, Vaughn. I know your friend means that, but I've seen it on public TV. I've seen that, and I've shown. I just watch. The other thing I hold the media, there's a whole organization called the Iraqi Veterans Against,
I know about, I saw them.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
and they're all young white guys,
Yep.
and these guys talk about this war in a way. He said, "Where were you when you sent me out with bad equipment,
No body armor.
no body armor, when my best friend was blown up in a Humvee that was guarded by wood?" See, the message is in the media, but it's America doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's the other problem with that. You got an America who could care less about these kids. I watch mothers and fathers sit there and talk about how proud they are of their children, who at 19 and 20 just been blown up.
And they don't have a clue.
I don't.
See,
It's very hard to understand.
you know, and
Very,
that's the
very
part
hard
that
to
I don't get.
understand.
Dan Rather was, you know, because Dan Rather and a couple others,
Yeah.
they would run the names of people killed in Iraq. But that ain't what's happening.
No, it's not what's happening. And, you know, the media still refuses to call Condoleezza Rice to account for the blatant lies that she told in order to trick people into buying into this whole concept
Okay.
of war.
Jack Wolfowitz,
You mean Paul Wolfowitz?
Paul Wolfowitz,
Right.
my man over him, the vice president, the president. I mean, America excused them for those lies. And they changed their program right at that anything.
Of course they did.
They, you know, there was no longer weapons of mass destruction, but he had to be done in anyway.
Yeah, well, it's about bringing democracy to the Iraqis. I'd like to see some democracy in Ohio. I'd like to see some democracy in Florida.
So
I'd like
would
to
I.
see some democracy in some of these places
I'd like to
where
see
people
some-
can't get a fair chance to vote.
Now, I don't want to just name that. I want to see some democracy in the 50 states of the United
Yeah,
States.
me
Thank
too.
you.
That's what I was going to
Thank
say.
you.
You know, I mean, who's offering us democracy?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really. So, in closing, it's a sad occasion. One, for a number of reasons. Johnny Cochran's dead and has passed, and it's like Larry says, we're losing the good people all the time,
Our heroes.
our heroes. And Johnny Cochran should be a hero
To all Americans.
in this media situation. Not enough of us are paying attention to it. None of us are protesting it.
And we all should be protesting it. There should be an outcry about what we're being told and what we're not being told.
That's correct.
And can we end on just one little
Go ahead,
bit of
and
hope?
you end it.
Yes.
Just one little bit
Yeah,
of
you
hope.
end it.
Hit it.
Yesterday, in the Archbishop's a presentation, when he mentioned his disgust with this war in Iraq, the place exploded. It exploded. There was so much support in that room, it wasn't even funny. Now, I know it's a biased crowd. I know all that kind of stuff. But it made your heart feel good.
That's it. You ended
Very
it.
good.
I didn't mean,
Thank you.
it's your ending. I should.
No,
No,
that's
that's
fine.
okay. I mean,
That's
I
great.
just don't like giving Vermonters credit for nothing.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I felt
I
so
don't
good.
like them,
Okay.
okay? I
felt-
think they're as racist and as sexist and as hedonistic as every other group.
They ain't nothing that I just said
Okay, but here's the
that
point.
flies in the face of that.
Here's the point, and I told somebody this today. I said, y'all are still the ones who elected that fool that was sitting down there
That's that.
supporting George Bush. How did he get to be governor?
That's true.
All of that's true.
I don't know of any black people who voted for Jim Douglas.
Well, I think you'd be surprised.
You could get a few surprises.
I think you'd be
Up on the
surprised.
hill, I know I guess there's no prize.
I think you'd be surprised.